Chapter 16. A Murder of Crows. Choice, when it came, was a novelty after having been enslaved for so long. Even this close to the world's gravity well, he could jettison enough dead hive mass to propel him past the planet. Engaging his graviton harpoon, he could find another place to live out his life. He needed nothing from the world below to perpetuate his existence. He had other options. He could follow the lost parts of the hive into perpetual blackness, explore the other worlds within the solar system, or experience any one of a multitude of spectacular deaths. That he would pursue the Alpha Guardian was never in question, but just having a decision before him gave him the closest thing he had felt to pleasure in a long time. I grabbed Mindy and got her up from the lounge chair. She started whining. "Get up," I said. "Now, we've rested long enough."
"But Deanne, I want to watch,"
she said.
"And it's dark, and I'm tired."
"If we stay here, we're going to die." I could see Bethany standing inside by the window. I couldn't tell if she was staring at me or the sky. She didn't react as I pulled Mindy along towards the steps leading down to the driveway. "Bethany, come on," I called. But I wasn't going to wait. We were out of time and had wasted too much of it.
"You hear her too, don't you?"
Mindy asked as I helped her down the dark stairs. She wasn't dead weight, but she wasn't making it easy to keep her moving.
"Her voice is everywhere. All we have to do is listen some more."
I grabbed her by both arms. "Wake up. We're sick. We have something in us that's doing this, and it's not normal. Do you want to die? Do you?"
"No,"
she said in a small voice. "Good. Neither do I." I led her down the stairs. The carport was pitch black. "Deanne, stop," Bethany said. She was coming down the stairs, a lit flashlight in her hands. I froze. I didn't know what I could do against her if she attacked me. She was bigger and stronger. She got close and took Mindy by the arm. I took a step back. There was nothing in reach that would serve as a weapon. "Let's go, Beth," I said, hoping she couldn't hear the jitters in my voice. She handed me the flashlight and then got one of Mindy's arms around her shoulder. "Don't let us trip." We descended the driveway, using the light to illuminate the way. Once we made it to the road, enough of the eerie glow from above made it relatively easy to walk. I turned the flashlight off.
"You heard her, right, Beth?"
Mindy asked.
"She's nearby. She wants us to join her."
Beth didn't reply. She set the pace, keeping Mindy walking. I followed. Mindy's head rolled back and she looked up.
"It's like Christmas,"
she said.
"It's everything we prayed for. The pain is gone."
"Keep walking," Bethany said. "Do you need help with her?" I asked. "No." It was hard not to look up. I began to wonder if leaving the house had been a mistake. There were worse views to take in as the world ended. But I wasn't ready for that yet. A final glance at the sky made me wonder where the goddess was in all this beauty and destruction. The ache in my arm was fierce. I wondered how Bethany was faring, but she marched on like a machine. Our very own Terminator. We came to a long straightaway with a passing lane and more turnouts. There were quite a few driveways with multiple mailboxes. We were getting close to the bottom of the hill, closer to the next town, but I didn't trust my sense of distance in this Twilight Zone world I found myself in. Something swooped low right above my head, forcing me to duck. I shined the light around above us, trying to see what it was. It came at me again. It was light in color and flapping wildly. I screamed and dove aside as it plunged and struck the ground where I had been standing. I trained the light on it. It looked like a thick bat made of human skin. Except for its two wings, it had no head or any other limbs or recognizable organs. It flopped on the ground and then stood, using the wings as legs. It wiggled for a moment, then sprang up into the air, the wings beating wildly. I swung the flashlight as it passed me by, but it was too high to hit. Bethany and Mindy crouched down as I played the light around, trying to see where it had gone. I couldn't find it. Let's move, I said. As the girls rose and hurried past me, I waited for a moment, as if I had another weapon besides a flashlight. Then I turned and followed. The creature darted in front of me. Then right on its heels came another, and a third. My flashlight connected with one of the flyers, but the impact broke the light. The creature fell and flopped to the ground. I stomped on it. It was solid and it moved as my foot made impact. I drove my heel down again and felt it wriggle and then burst like a cantaloupe. The other two bats were harrying the girls, and Bethany was doing her best to shield Mindy. I ran forward and knocked one out of the air and then hit the next one. It latched onto my bad hand, turning all the pain receptors I was managing to ignore up to maximum. The flapping thing had no mouth, but it wrapped both wings tight so I couldn't shake it free. "I've got one on me!" I gripped the bat thing with my free hand, but pulling at it was agony. I didn't know where Mindy got a stick, but she was about to swing it at me. "Stop!" I screamed. "Just stop!" Mindy lowered the stick. Bethany stepped around her, a small knife in her hand. I wanted nothing more than to back away, but I held my arm out. I trembled as the bat wriggled and tightened on my arm like a constrictor snake. Sweat dampened my face. "Please, Beth, get it off," I said. "That's what I'm trying to do." Bethany's words were muffled, and it sounded like she was developing a lisp. "Hold still." I wondered if she could still see. She held my arm and sliced at the bat. It squeezed until I thought my bones would break. "Stop," a woman's voice said. "Why are you hurting me?" It was her, the goddess. I tried to clear my head. "Keep cutting," I whispered. "Keep cutting, keep cutting, keep cutting." The bat fell in two, and the pieces clung to Bethany's hands like they were covered in glue. She grunted and pulled her hands free and then stepped on the wriggling pieces. Even in the gloom, I could see blood dripping down her fingers. Her hands trembled. "Come on," Mindy said. The other two bats slunk towards us. Mindy and I helped Bethany along, and then we started running. I saw a fourth thing on the ground as we hurried past, and it appeared to have more than two wings. Then I realized it was a bat wrapped around a struggling bird, something large like a crow. We came across more of them on the ground, birds and the fleshy bats intertwined and thrashing. Mindy hesitated in the middle of it all, and I had to move her along. We were careful not to step on anything. A small parking lot lay just ahead. The building next to it had a sign that read, "Tito's Barbecue and Deli." I was just about to pass between the half-dozen cars when I noticed a cluster of the beehive growths ahead of me. We stopped. Each beehive looked about the same size as one of the bats. "Wait here." I went around the cars and found a clear path to the front of the deli. I didn't get close to any of the growths, but I watched them for movement. "Hello?" I called as I pushed the door to the deli open. "Anyone in here?" I got no answer. As I went in, I saw a tall growth on the ground near a refrigerator full of soft drinks. It looked like two people caught in an embrace, but they were covered over in bumps as if wrapped in a web. It was too dark to see them clearly. I didn't want to see more. I backed up and returned to Mindy and Bethany. "It's no good," I said. "Keep going." A few more homes and businesses lined the street. I guessed the highway wasn't too far off, perhaps close enough that we would normally be able to hear it by now. From the distance came a series of gunshots. Someone was alive, but with the hills around us, we could only get a general direction, and we weren't in any kind of shape to be rescuing anyone. We needed rescuing. The barrage continued. Whoever they were, they had a lot of ammo, and whatever they were shooting at wasn't going down. We came to an intersection. At a nearby house, something in the front yard caught my eye. I headed over. It was a plastic turtle sandbox. Several toys were scattered on what might once have been a lawn, but was now a patch of dirt. I tried the garage door, but it was locked. The side gate wasn't. "What's here?" Mindy asked. "Kids, so maybe bikes." The house was locked tight. The gunshots made me leery about indiscriminately breaking in, but now I knew what to look for. Back on the street, we walked down the middle of the lane, and we hadn't gone far before I found what I was looking for. A Subaru parked on the street had a bike rack mounted on the back. They should have a grown-up bike or two. I was about to go around the side when Bethany manhandled the rolling garage door, shifting it to one side and forcing it up on its track. It made a horrible screech of metal and only raised up a couple of feet. I rolled under the door. A second vehicle was parked inside, a Range Rover. And among all the other junk in the garage, I spotted 2 mountain bikes. I took one off its hanging rack and passed it under the door. When I got up to take the second bike, I heard the door to the house open. A flashlight beam hit me in the face.
"Hey, what are you doing there?"
A man barked. I froze. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to cooperate.
"Let me see your hands."
I raised them. I couldn't see anything.
"Who else is with you?"
"My friends," I said. "We didn't know anyone was here. We were looking for bikes."
"This is my house."
I was waiting for more, but he hesitated. "Can you call the police?" I asked. "We need help. We were up in French Meadows fighting the fire." The light moved and shined up and down along my body and around towards the front of the garage. I squinted. By the way he was standing, he didn't appear to be armed.
"You have that stuff on your hands,"
he said. I almost hid my hand, but then held it forward for him to see. "We're sick. All of us. We need to get to a hospital."
"I can't help you. I doubt the hospital can either. There's an urgent care here in town, but I can't believe they're up and running."
"Your car doesn't work?"
"No one's does. How did you walk down here from French Meadows?"
I nodded. "There's things out there following us. You're the first person we've had to talk to. What's going on?"
"You saw the sky. It's the end of the world."
I waited for him to lower the light, but he kept it trained on me. He wasn't alone. I heard him whispering something. I tensed up. If he was another sick crazy like the old man, then it was time to bolt. But I heard a second voice, a woman's. Finally, he said,
"You have to leave. We can't risk getting sick."
I didn't know what else to say. I couldn't argue, but at least we had one bike. 2 more to go. There were no more easy bikes to be had, and I wasn't ready to break into more houses. As we walked, we saw a couple of homes with lights up on a distant hill. Someone had generators going. But generators meant they no doubt were ready for other inconveniences like a trio of youthful felons intent on theft. Mindy walked the bike.
"What time do you think it is?"
she asked. A late moon was rising, a waning crescent. Maybe 1 or 2 in the morning, I guessed. As we trudged up an incline, we heard an engine gunning in our direction, and we got over to the side of the road. A car rocketed past, its high beams on. The vehicle's tires squealed as he rounded the corner, and he was gone.
"We need a car,"
Bethany said. We had passed several more homes. Most had vehicles parked out front. But judging by what the last man had told me, I doubted many of the cars parked inside the garages worked. Checking any of them presented the same problem as finding more bikes. I wanted to get away from the rich and the weird that had settled up in this part of the county. There were too many guns, and I still had the sense that Officer Bird was going to catch up with us if we stopped. The light show above had diminished to only the occasional swirl of color. The falling stars had ceased. Maybe it was all over. Maybe with the dawn, power would return and everyone would come out of hiding and we could return to juvie hall like good girls and quietly finish our time. We tried the doors of all parked vehicles we came across. Then we came to a large intersection with a dark traffic light. A handful of vehicles had apparently run into each other and were clustered together like jumbled toys. I guess they got mixed signals, I said lamely, and instantly regretted my words when I saw a body sitting in a smashed Chevy pickup. The woman had been thrown into her side window, and her head was partially crushed. I felt a pang of despair. Either no one had bothered to get her out, or no one had been able. Maybe everyone was buttoned up in their homes awaiting rescue. Bethany and Mindy checked the other vehicles for anything that could help us. I stayed away. One car actually had a bike strapped to the back, but it was bent. Bethany came away from a minivan with a couple of bottles of water and another flashlight. It produced a weak orange beam that barely threw out any light. She slid it into her pocket and handed me a water. No one helped, I said. I took a couple of swallows and handed the water back to Bethany.
Maybe they did all they could.
A distant boom that might have been a rifle firing snapped me out of my funk. We had an incline to go down. In my younger years, I would have suggested we all try to somehow climb aboard the one bike, but the thought of suffering a crash and a broken bone with everything else we were dealing with quickly disabused me of the notion. More lights flickered in the distance. Not many, but enough to give me hope that there was power down in the valley. For a moment, I thought it meant that there were also lights in the closest town downhill. Did Auburn have power? And if Auburn, then no doubt Roseville. And as goes Roseville, so goes the rest of the world. It was all working again, and we were about to escape whatever localized doom had descended upon the Sierra Nevada foothills. Then I realized the low glow was fire. We passed a school and more residences. I focused on moving one step at a time. Anything more than that would have been too ambitious. We even saw a couple of people walking the opposite direction, but they shied away from us and our groups passed each other without a word. They were heading uphill and away from town. Maybe they knew something we didn't. The light from the distant fire was nowhere to be seen now that we were close to town. I couldn't walk another step. We found some benches set in the middle of a building's well-manicured landscaping. We each took a bench and sat. Exhaustion overwhelmed me. I found myself dozing even before I could assign someone to keep watch while the others slept.
Embrace me.
It felt like grabbing a live wire. The muscles in my right hand clenched uncontrollably, unable to let go. It only hurt when I resisted. She was there, and I was to join her. I could bring others. We all could come together and lock ourselves into her outstretched arms. White pain tore through my arm, up my shoulder and through my skull. I forced myself to get up, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. I fell forward to the concrete. My jaw clenched tight, preventing me from screaming. Just as suddenly, the pain relented. It took me a moment to catch my breath. Her words echoed in my head, but faded quickly.
It's worse when you sleep,
Bethany said. She was sitting on the next bench, watching me. It took me a moment to decipher her words. This happened to you? Bethany nodded once. But we have to sleep. What happens if we give in and let go?
I haven't given in.
Mindy mumbled something. She was curled up as best she could on her bench, her head resting on her arm. Her breathing came in fits and starts, and she kept making sounds as if she was trying to speak. I went over to wake her. I pushed hair from her face and then shook her shoulder. The way she jerked in response made me think she was having a seizure. "Mindy," I said. "Wake up. Now." Her eyes opened. It took her a moment to even see me.
Deanne?
You were having a bad dream.
She was there, and she spoke to me. What does it mean?
It means we're sick. This disease is affecting our heads. Once we get some rest, we keep going. We get help. Someone will know what to do. Then we find a ride and go home. I promise we'll get through this. I knew she didn't have much in the way of a home to return to, but it felt like the right thing to say. At least I had my mom's house. The moment this crossed my mind, I instantly felt bad for not having thought of her this whole time. Was she sheltering in place right now? My mom always knew the right place to be when the chips were down, even if it meant abandoning my brother and me for days on end. The bills got paid and the lights stayed on. As I thought about her, I realized that my condition hadn't started with the power going out or the light show in the sky. My rash had started up the day we left juvie hall to fight the fire. My mother had visited the day before. She'd had a blemish covered with makeup. Had she? A man and a woman came around the corner of the building. Both held shotguns in their hands. They didn't point the weapons at us, but they held them at the ready. "You girls okay?" the woman asked. "No, we're not," I said. "Not really." "Can you walk?" "Yes."
"Why don't you come around the front?" the man said. "We have a little food to share and some water."
"Do you have power? And do you know what's going on?" "We're piecing it together," the woman said. "We don't have power, but we have a radio that works." Chapter 17. The Devil's Radio. Even as he descended down through the blue world's atmosphere, he knew he was in trouble. The air was denser than expected, and he was on fire. Most of the carbon shell of his ship's module had burned away, as had the cluster of deceased hive life he had kept with him for added shielding. Their final spasms before their breakdown jolted his system, which had been too long in sync with the hive. Casting them off felt liberating, but now little but his own crystalline skin protected him from the rigors of his downward plunge. It took all his willpower as a maker to keep the remnants of the shell intact. He drew on skills learned long before the hive had ever come to his world. If the shell fell fully away, he wouldn't survive. But he needed to shed as much mass as possible to be able to decelerate below what he calculated to be a terminal velocity. The air buffeted him. Winds tore at his skin as he entered the lower atmosphere at hypersonic speed. With all his might, he pushed against the magnetic fields below him. It aided some in slowing his descent. It wasn't enough. He drank in the roar of the passing clouds and the red light of the setting sun. After so many years in the darkness of space, the sensations were almost too much. A new world alive with life. He wanted nothing more than to take in its beauty for that final moment. It would be a magnificent end. Instead, he turned off all input, returned within himself as if the hive were still alive, and focused on the task of spreading the ablating remnants of his shell closed in front of him even as he burned. A small crowd of maybe 20 had gathered in front of the city library. Chairs had been brought out from inside. The doors were open and the women told us there was a working bathroom inside. A few kids were wrapped in sleeping bags on the lobby floor, with nests of cushions placed under and around them. The kids looked comfortable and I envied their sleep. Small battery-powered lanterns lit the way along a side hall. I found the restroom. Mindy followed me and went into a stall. I washed up, but was afraid to look at my own reflection. The lack of good light was a mercy. My arm burned, but I couldn't stand to look at it. The limb had become an unfamiliar thing that frightened me. I rinsed it off and dabbed it dry with paper towels. I left Mindy to her business. When I went back outside, the woman told me her name was Julia and pointed to an open cooler. "It's not much," she said, "but we brought what we had." The cooler was full of fresh fruit and packaged snacks. I grabbed an apple. "Where did you girls come from?" Julia asked. "We were up fighting the fire," I said. Judging from her look, she didn't believe me. "We're volunteers from the juvie hall." "That explains your friends' outfits. You have family nearby?" "Roseville. We're trying to get home. Nobody seems to know what's going on. You said there's a radio?" The county had an old one set up inside which we connected to a battery. We reached a couple of people nearby and were trying to gather information. The power outage is widespread. That's about the only thing we know for sure. It means the radio's range is limited. We're hoping once people get the radio network up using batteries and solar, we'll get more news this morning. I looked her over. Her skin appeared to be clear of bumps. "Is anyone here sick?" I asked. "I've seen a few people. Your friend there looks like she has it pretty bad." She nodded towards Bethany, who had found a place to sit just inside the gloomy library. We were hoping to get to a hospital. There's no doctor here, and no one has a car that works. There were a couple of cars right after it all started, but none stuck around. I'm sorry. But at least if you stay here, we can keep you safe. Safe. I wasn't sure what that word would mean under the circumstances. Have you seen anything strange, either flying or coming into town? Julia had a weathered, easy-to-read face that showed she had no idea what I meant. Like looters? No one like that here, thank God. There's been no airplanes since the power went down. I mean like unusual flying animals, or something really big, bigger than a bear. No, nothing like that. Why? Should we be worried? We were attacked on our way here, flying things like bats, but up in French Meadows there was something bigger. I don't know how to explain it. Julia nodded at the shotgun leaning against a nearby chair. I think we'll be okay, even if a bear should come down the hill to cause trouble. Don't you worry. A family of 6 approached the library, and Julia was the one to greet them. I noticed she left the shotgun behind with the new arrivals, but she hadn't with us. Her male companion kept an eye on the weapon, and was watching us a little more carefully than any of the others. It was clear we didn't belong. I could overhear a few snippets of conversation. The newcomers weren't local either. They had made their way from the highway after a day helping some motorists who had crashed and wrecked their vehicles when the power cut out. The wife of the family was irate and even screamed at Julia to send help. There were people who needed ambulances up on the highway. Why wasn't anyone doing anything? Julia took the abuse like a champ and told her they'd do what they could. The husband didn't say a word to calm her down, but finally she ran out of steam and got her kids inside the library. It looked like she had blood on her blouse. Julia followed them in after grabbing a few juice boxes. She then returned outside and stood next to me. Julia looked tired and she stared off in the distance as she spoke. A neighbor took in a delivery driver whose water truck went into a power pole the evening the power went out. The man was going too fast, and he broke both his arms. He screamed all night long, and they couldn't get a doctor. I heard of a few others with bad injuries on the highway. I would have gone. I'm sure others closer by did. There have to be hundreds who need help. But the moment the lights went out, I saw a plane in the night sky. It glided silently past, heading west. It didn't waver from its path, even though I knew it couldn't make Sacramento or wherever it was flying to by gliding. It crashed somewhere down in the valley. Then I thought about how many other planes were up there. I waited for more, but she was done talking. I got up and went inside the library. As exhausted as I was, I felt restless. Felt that stopping here was the wrong choice, even though I didn't know where else to go. I could hear the mother who had come in earlier crying in the bathroom. I went the other way and checked the librarian's desk. The phones there were out. I went through its drawers. This caught the attention of 2 women nearby, but neither said anything. Prison girl here. Say the wrong thing and I'll shank you. I found a calculator. The power switch did nothing despite its having batteries and a little solar panel. It was a different story with a powered pencil sharpener I dug out of a metal file cabinet. I jammed a pen in it and it made a weak, grinding noise as it chewed up the top of the pen. The calculator's batteries had expiration dates a couple of years off. I got the AAA batteries out of the sharpener and put them in the calculator. The calculator still wouldn't power on. Calculating overdue fees would have to be done longhand. But flashlights and pencil sharpeners worked. I didn't know what it meant. After exploring for a few minutes, I found the library's radio room. A pair of lanterns lit the tiny back room. 3 men sat around a giant box of a radio, and it had power. The first man wore headphones and held a handset close to his mouth.
Phil in Orange Blossom. Are you still there?
All 3 of the men looked tired. No one noticed when I entered and looked around. I saw displays dedicated to a local Marine who had served in the 2nd Radio Battalion in World War II. I saw black and white pictures of young soldiers who appeared to be working in sweltering heat. either on small boats or on sandy beaches, with radios and large metal-framed antennas. A map displayed the islands of the Pacific Ocean with pins showing the unit's progress during the war. There were a few close-ups of the soldiers, including the honoree, who had passed away just a year before. I saw a display of ribbons, unit citation medals, several knives, and some other pieces of personal equipment a Marine might carry. There were clippings of articles, but the poor light made reading difficult. Some chatter came through the radio.
Phil, I'm not reading any of that, but I'm here and listening. Please repeat. Over.
Any news? I asked. The second guy, who held a steno pad and pen, leaned back in his chair and looked me over.
We've reached a few people out there with their radios up, he said. We've heard reports of fires around Sacramento and Yuba City. Lots of car crashes and several planes went down that first evening. But every time we get somewhere, we lose them minutes later. Lots of interference in the air.
Is that from what we see going on in the sky?
Possibly. Probably. This is supposed to be a quiet year for solar activity. I've never heard of seeing the northern lights this far south.
The third man wore a cap with ear flaps.
It's happened before. Saw him down in Texas once. Still doesn't explain how we didn't see it coming,
the man with the steno pad said. The man with the cap grunted. He stared at the radio as if its continued operation depended on the sheer force of his concentration. Any reports of other things, like sick people acting weird or animals or birds attacking? The radio man made a shushing motion. More distinguishable voices came over the speakers, interspersed with static.
Was expecting to hear something from McClellan or even Travis Air Force Base,
the man with the steno pad said.
But most of the radio infrastructure is on the blink.
But your radio works. Flashlights too. I found a pencil sharpener with power, but a calculator wouldn't work with the same batteries. The man with the steno pad nodded.
Anything with fine circuitry appears to have been fried. Nukes could do that, or a bad enough solar storm. Or maybe this goddess decided this was the best way to get people to stop shooting at her.
Guns still work, the man with the cap said.
That they do. But what use is your gun in heating up your frozen chicken parm? We'll hunt. Jim, you haven't gone hunting in 20 years. You don't exactly live in a cabin in the woods, and I doubt you'd hit the broad side of a moose if he were standing next to you. Will you all keep it down? The radio man said.
So it was an electromagnetic pulse, I said. Just maybe a natural one. The man with the steno pad gave me a look. I read a lot, I said. And there's movies.
At least there were, he said. But I guess the cause is moot. We have to find out what's happening now so we can see what's coming next.
I couldn't argue with that. Some cars were working. We found a car, but someone stole it from us. This caught the man's interest.
I saw a couple of cars working too. Older or newer?
Pretty old, but in good shape, I said. But it was inside a garage.
Maybe it had a lot of metal around it. Could disrupt an EMP. Maybe it was old enough to not have a lot of circuitry like a computer. Or it just got lucky. But the older cars, they should work if the battery is good. We need to check people's garages. Test every car.
He made a note on the steno pad. He had pages of notes. While he scribbled, the man on the radio kept listening. And the third just hunkered down to watch. I went to find Mindy. Chapter 18. The Library. The violence of his landing was a distant event, more data than sensation. He had shut off all sensory input, and expended the last of his strength keeping the remnants of the carbon shield together. It completely failed in the final seconds before impact. All went black. He felt nothing, touched nothing, floated. Then pain filled his body, reminding him he was alive. As he came out of his maker's trance, he knew he was damaged. The shell, crafted from elements drawn from his homeworld, had served its purpose in saving him, but just barely. All motion had stopped. He was buried in soil. Much of his outer skin was cracked. The amount of damage might have been crippling back home. It would have taken months to heal with the limited energy and resources there. He might have chosen to perish if he were still there, as expiring among his people would mean his essence would be reused and become part of them. But here he was alone. The ground cooked around him. The heat from the impact was energy he could use. While in his maker's trance, this hadn't been possible. But now he absorbed as much of it as he could as he ascended from the crater. It meant pain, this rapid conversion of energy. But slowly he felt it course through him. He was alive, but his body required repair if he was to continue. A shroud of hot vapor followed him as he emerged from the crater. He wasn't concerned about the quality of the air around him. He didn't breathe and could survive in a vacuum. What he needed was raw matter. He drew what he could find from the soil. He looked for silicon, sodium, carbon, and any metals. He guessed he would find more once he moved through the nearby town, whose structures were no doubt comprised of such basic building blocks. From the air, he found more usable elements. Oxygen, for one, and more carbon. Crystals formed, and he began multiple chain reactions, all microscopic along the cracks of his skin. His body would do the rest. The healing process took time. But would the Alpha Guardian know of his arrival? He would have to work quickly, and not just in healing. He would have to prepare for an attack, the nature of which would be unknown until he learned what the Alpha could do, and had done, with the resources of their new world. He formed more crystals and set them growing around him. Soon these would be visible to natives and invaders alike. Each crystal would serve as an emergency reserve for him, and so much more. But could he make enough in time?
Bethany and Mindy sat with each other in the dark lobby where the kids slept. Mindy was eating applesauce out of a disposable container. Bethany leaned to one side in her chair with her legs stretched out in front of her. She might have been asleep, except her eyes were open and watching me through the curtain of hair. The growth on her face was clearly visible as the morning light came into the library.
"They don't know much more than we do," I said.
"There might be more cars out there that run, but we'd have to check inside people's garages."
When neither responded, I added, "What do we want to do?"
Mindy looked up from her applesauce. Most of it was eaten.
"They have food."
"And it's safe here," Bethany said. "The goddess has provided."
"Is it safe?" I asked. "They haven't dealt with any of the things we saw. It's like they're in some bubble. Maybe the weird stuff is only going on up at French Meadows, but those birds weren't that far away. I think waiting is a mistake."
"But go where?"
Mindy asked. "We need a hospital. We're not that far away from home if we can get a car. Some real food would be good." Mindy considered her empty container and suddenly looked less than satisfied.
"There's people with guns all around us," Bethany said. "Go ask if they have contact with any cops or the fire department. We have to let the guards at Juvie know where we are."
"Is that what you're worried about?" I asked. I was getting pretty punchy, and it came out too loud. "I don't think we're on anyone's to-do list. This isn't just some today problem that's going to clear up. I think we're better off trying to get closer to home, assuming there's a home to return to. There's only a clinic here, and we're sick. If this whole thing blows over, then we can walk back to jail. But the world is ending out there, and the last thing anyone's worried about is a group of 3 unaccounted-for juvenile felons." Bethany was glaring at me.
"Are you done? Go ask about the cops."
I realized she was uncomfortable talking, and no doubt self-conscious about her appearance. It explained why she was hiding in the shadows. Our affliction was the one tangible piece of evidence that something besides a power outage was going on. I nodded, gave Mindy a smile, and went outside. A few more people were drifting towards the library. One woman carried a pallet of water bottles. Another had a foil-covered sheet of something that smelled like bread. The aroma caused my stomach to start complaining. The woman must have seen my reaction on my face, and she gave me a broad smile and pulled back a corner of the foil to reveal a batch of baked rolls with some kind of crusty nut topping. Then she looked up past me and her face fell in shock. I turned. Not too far off, Julia and a couple of others were putting drinks into a cooler. Past them loomed a large shadow at the side of the library that I thought at first was a tree. Then it moved. A pair of long arms with 4 or 5 joints and hands with foot-long fingers reached out, one grabbing Julia and another taking a man leaning back on a library chair. Julia was hauled back towards the shadow. The man was grabbed by the head. He screamed, kicking and flailing as he was dragged. His hands gripped his chair, but it went with him. Then a third arm shot out towards me. I stumbled backwards on the ground and watched in horror as the woman with the tray of bread was knocked down. The hand and arm were impossibly long, each segment between the multiple elbows a different width and with skin of varying tones and colors, as if stitched together from dozens of sources. All of it was covered in blisters and bumps. The bread spilled out on the walkway next to me. The woman screamed. Others were screaming too as they saw the thing move forward into the light. Then the woman was yanked into the air and she vanished inside the mass coming around the library. The shape was made of people. I heard an infernal sound rise above the screams of the panicked survivors. It was a laugh and a bellow and the howl all at the same time. The sound rose from the creature like an explosion of noise, voices all calling together in a shared rage. A hunger.
Inmate, you've led us here. Thank you.
My jaw twitched. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. Words wouldn't form. The voice of Officer Bird was loud in my head.
Now come with me,
it said. The shape rose up on dozens of legs and limbs, making me think of a malformed spider. It leaned over the front of the library. One of its hands snapped out and reached under the overhang to haul away a child that had been cowering by the exit. It was taken into the mass without a sound. I got up and ran. A long hand swiped at me as I stumbled out of the way. I headed towards a row of parked cars on the street. The rising cries of the thing behind me got louder, and I couldn't shut it out of my mind. In my panic, I slammed into the back of a car and fell into the street. One of the thing's arms followed behind me, skittering along the ground like a centipede. It smacked my shoe, but I was just out of reach. The limb was still attached to the creature's body by thin strands of tendons, but it stretched until I thought the white fibers holding it back would snap. I backed away. Suddenly, the arm withdrew. The central mass of the thing's body pushed up against the front of the library. Glass shattered. I heard screams from inside. The monster's limbs all receded, pulled back under folds of skin, only to shoot out inside the building with explosive force. There was nothing nearby that could help me. If any of the vehicles worked, I could have rammed the thing. Then I heard the boom of a shotgun. A man stepped onto the sidewalk near me and unloaded 6 more blasts before backing away. He hadn't even caught its attention. He fumbled in his vest pockets and dropped several shotgun shells on the street. I went to help pick them up, startling him when I got close. He was young, maybe 20, with a dimpled, boyish face. He looked like one of my brother's friends. With shaking hands, he resumed trying to load the weapon. I handed him more shells. "Shoot it!" I said. He pointed his weapon and fired. Each blast was deafening, and I put my hands to my ears. Deanne. It was the woman. Even as my ears rang, her whisper was loud. "You are part of us." I still held 2 more shells. The shotgun clicked. When I handed the shells over, my infected hand brushed his. I felt the woman's sigh. Pleasant. Joyful. My action pleased her. I shook my head to clear her from it. The man with the shotgun and I locked eyes. "It's all I have," he said as he loaded the last 2 shells. He must have misunderstood my expression of guilt. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry." He wasn't listening. He fired 2 more times. The giant thing continued to fish around inside the building and was forcing its body through the front. About half of it was now inside. I heard more shots echo from within the library. The man with the shotgun was backing away.
We need to get help.
I nodded and watched as he ran. I had touched him. He had what I had. He would get sick. Mindy and Bethany were still inside, but I didn't dare get closer. I saw that the surface of the thing's roiling skin was a patchwork of submerged heads and partially formed limbs. I saw bird wings and the twitching rear leg of a dog. The thing wanted everything, not just people. I ran along the sidewalk and across the landscaping to the back of the library. I tried a fire door, but it wouldn't open. I banged on a window. "This way!" I screamed. I heard people panicking inside. I couldn't see anything that would break the window. The roar of the creature resumed, louder now, as if the thing was feeding on the terror of those trapped inside. I heard crashes of furniture and glass breaking. Then motion caught my eye. I looked up. Officer Bird's head, attached to a thick pillar of flesh, was coming around the far corner of the library. I stopped hitting the window and took a step back. Some of his limbs crawled along beside him, more hands on long leashes of tendon.
"Inmate,"
he said.
"You're either with her or me. Let us help you with your pain."
His voice sounded like it was coming from a man being strangled. The head twisted on the long neck until it hung upside down. "Leave me alone," I said, as I felt the strength drain from me. "Leave us all alone." I knew I wouldn't leave the others. I leaned on the door. One of the hands came forward but stopped. The fingers twitched. Officer Bird's face twisted in discomfort. He couldn't come any further, at least not for the moment. The thing had reached the limits of how far it could extend itself. The fire door pushed open. Bethany emerged with Mindy following close behind. "This way," I said. "Run!" We fled from the building with Officer Bird laughing as we ran. His voice followed me, as did the screams of the people trapped in the library. When I last looked back, it appeared that there were two of the massive creatures, or the one had split, and the second was attacking the building through the open fire door. A wave of guilt hit me as I thought about the spilled bread rolls we had left behind. Unbelievable. In the face of all the horror, I was thinking about my stomach. We hurried along and avoided every shadow.
"How did it follow us?"
Mindy said, her voice full of panic.
"It was him, wasn't it? But how? It's like I can hear him in my head. Just like the goddess."
We were running down a wide street that took a turn by a post office. I stopped Mindy in her tracks. "You still hear him?" She shook her head.
"Not out loud. It's like I'm imagining it, but not."
I looked at Bethany. "And the goddess?" I asked Mindy. "You hear her too?" She nodded.
"But she doesn't frighten me like he does."
I think they're somehow the same thing, or close to it. I don't know how. All of this is part of her. The birds, that thing back at the library, the stuff growing on us. It's like one big giant disease, and we've caught it. Neither asked the obvious question. How do we get rid of it? They both just stared at me like I was crazy. More gunshots echoed from behind us. "Come on," Bethany said. The lane that we were on led towards more homes. I saw a few prominent business signs down a street to our left. A Chevron station, a Burger King. A green sign with an arrow indicated Highway 80 was in that direction. "This way." In a parking lot by a chain-link fence, a group of maybe 10 people had gathered. Some camping supplies were scattered around, including several coolers. They held cans of beer, and why not? It must have been almost 10 in the morning. Happy hour somewhere. They stood in a tight, nervous group, the beers in hand looking like an attempt to appear unshaken in the face of whatever was happening. They couldn't have missed the gunfire. All eyes were on us as we approached. Bethany and Mindy crossed to the sidewalk opposite of them. We were near an overpass and an on-ramp. There was some comfort in knowing exactly where we were. Now we just had to figure out where we were going. "I'll catch up," I said. "I need to warn them." How? Bethany asked. She was sounding more and more like she had gauze in her mouth. One of the men was walking towards me. He carried a pistol on his hip and wore dark sunglasses. He looked me over and I saw the sun-beaten face of someone much older than I had initially thought.
"Where are you girls coming from?"
he asked. "We were up fighting the fire," I said. My words were coming out too fast. "Listen, there's something attacking people up by the library."
"Is there now? And what exactly might that be?"
He had one hand on his hip. One of the others in the group came over. He was much younger but similarly armed. Perhaps the guns explained the casual bravado. "There's no way to explain it. It's big. It killed a bunch of people up in French Meadows and now it's here. It's part of some kind of infection. Do you guys have a radio?" He nodded towards Mindy and Bethany.
"Why don't you have them come over and we can talk?"
There was something about his cocky manner and disposition. I looked back towards Mindy and Bethany. Even with the layer of dirt on their outfits, it was unmistakable. They were inmates, and I was with them wearing clothes not my own. "You're a cop," I said.
"And I'm guessing the three of you are out on your own self-guided tour without a correctional officer."
"We were with a group fighting the fire when the trouble started. We got separated."
"Well, maybe we should talk some more about that. Hey, you two," he called across the street. "Why don't you come over here?"
Mindy started to, but Bethany stopped her. I felt a rush of anger. "With everything that's going on, we're what you're worried about? There's people dying by the library, and you feel the need to hassle us? You've got to be kidding me. There are people up there that need help. And I doubt you're even local cops. Otherwise, why wouldn't you have gone home and put on your uniform?" Clearly, I was amusing the cop's younger partner, as he was grinning ear to ear.
"One, I'm off duty,"
the cop said.
"And two, no, I'm not local. I'm passing through. But we're both police officers in Reno, and yes, with everything going on, having 3 escaped felons on the loose makes things just a little more unsafe. So if you don't mind, come over here where we can keep an eye on you. I'm not asking."
He said all this loud enough for Bethany and Mindy to hear, as well as the entire group in the parking lot. There was something about the frat boy atmosphere that made me nervous.
"Come on now."
He beckoned the girls over. There came the muffled pops of more gunshots. He appeared not to notice. "Those people need help," I said, my voice failing me.
"We'll see to that. How many more of you are there?"
"It's just us. There were 2 crews, 1 boy, 1 girl. Both of our correctional officers are dead." That caught his attention.
"What do you mean? What did you do?"
"We didn't do anything. There's something in the air making people sick up in French Meadows, and something bad has followed us and is now here. There's people dying at the library." The older cop looked back at his partner. He was looking off in the direction we had come from. "Tell me you have a radio or a doctor. We heard people got hurt on the highway and were sick and need help." As Bethany got close, the cop's eyes grew wide.
"What happened to you?"
he asked. I pulled up my sleeve and showed him my right arm. It was red and swollen up to my elbow. The fingers were starting to fuse together.
"I've never seen anything like that."
I was losing patience. "Is there a doctor here or not? A working radio at least?" "Look!" the cop's partner pointed. In the direction of the library, a cloud of flying birds took to the air. Some part of me knew they weren't birds, but more of the bat things. More gunshots followed. The flying things swooped up and formed a large circle formation before turning and diving back down and out of sight. No more gunfire followed. The echoes died away. The birds are part of it. They get consumed by the infection just like we do. It's changed them. When the older cop looked back at me, I saw his resolve crumble.
Get away from us,
he whispered. Even under Bethany's mask, I could tell she was angry, but I led us away. We cut across a lot stacked with concrete barriers and went down to the highway. Chapter 19. Downhill. He would have saved time by going into the town first. It was replete with the metals used in the manufactured infrastructure of the native civilization, which only existed in trace amounts in the soil near his impact point. Whatever electromagnetic disruption the Alpha Guardian had wrought rendered the transmission lines inert, and much of the native technology worthless. Just as well, Magus would put it to use. He extracted copper, iron, aluminum, gold, and silver, and drew it towards him. Each moment wasted would be time for the enemy to surmise his intention. He was weak, the weakest he had ever been. The hive was no longer there to sustain him, and the enemy had already had many day cycles to gather her strength. He would be helpless in his maker's trance, but he had no choice if he wanted to fight her. The wrecked cars lay in heaps on either side of the divide. The largest semi-trucks appeared to have gathered up the smaller vehicles like a fishing net in a river. Several cars and trucks had escaped ruin and were pulled onto the shoulder while others had continued down a nearby embankment. The sight was stunning. It took me a moment to take in the devastation and to realize how extensive the whole blackout had been. I thought of Julia's words about the scope of the disaster. All the cars were affected, plus any planes in the sky. And what about hospitals? I worried that coming to the highway was a mistake. The number of people injured must have been staggering. And what were those cops doing about it, besides drinking beer and hassling us? Infuriating. But the thought of going back through Auburn for an alternate route and risking running into Officer Byrd was worse. At least here I knew what direction we were traveling. West and downhill would take us home. "We have to keep going," I said. "Try not to look." We marched beside the highway barrier as it was the clearest path forward. Not looking proved impossible. Too many cars were horror shows with crushed bodies trapped between tons of twisted metal. One dead woman lay directly in our path, having been thrown completely out of her car. I couldn't even tell which was hers. Mindy was beside herself and had to be led along. She seemed constantly at the cusp of trying to ask a question, but too overwhelmed to speak. "It'll be fine," I told her. "We just have to go a little further." I didn't hear anything from the town on either side of the highway. We made our way to a turn, and then once we made it past a final cluster of cars, the highway was mercifully clear. An old Toyota Corolla was parked on the shoulder with its door open. The vehicle appeared undamaged. It was covered with bumper stickers with slogans in Spanish and the names of a few radio stations I didn't recognize. The trunk was ajar, but it was empty. I looked inside the cab. Besides some dangling chains with crosses on the rearview mirror, there was nothing for us. The keys were in the ignition. "Wait," I said. "Mindy, Beth, come here." As they walked back to me, I turned the key. No surprise when the engine didn't turn. But the steering wheel unlocked. I got out and had Mindy sit in the driver's seat. I unlocked the other doors. "Steer us onto the road," I said. I went to push. The car was too heavy. "Come on, Beth."
"Why?"
"Because it's downhill from here if we can get the car rolling." You just have to know how to handle your ogre. With Bethany's help, pushing the car was a cinch. Once it was rolling, we climbed in. Mindy was having a hard time steering. We were heading across the 2 lanes and were about to hit the center divider. Bethany reached over from the passenger seat and got us on track, and we coasted down the hill. It made it a couple of miles before coming to a wreck that completely blocked our path. The road leveled, but Mindy still had to push hard on the brake to get us to stop. But it was 2 miles we didn't have to walk, and that much more distance between us and the thing that was chasing us. I hated to leave the car. Just sitting inside and rolling felt so normal. We found a wide shoulder and were able to look out towards the west. The hills here were lower, with more grass and fewer trees. Smoke hung over much of the valley and the air was still. I was startled by a crow in a nearby tree, but it had an ordinary head and tail and feathers. We had no luck finding another usable car. Our trek along the highway continued until we came to an off-ramp and we took it. A small group of people were standing and sitting around outside a service station and convenience store. Some people looked like they were hurt. I saw a CHP officer among them. I hesitated. We can check in there later. Let's find some place to rest and eat before we get taken into custody. Mindy and Bethany followed me, but I worried I was making the wrong choice. There was an Arby's and a KFC. The windows were dark, but both had people in them. When I checked both restaurants, I found they were out of food. The KFC was having some kind of group prayer, while the Arby's people were milling around. I heard things breaking back in the kitchen. I can go scout, I said. Find us a place while you guys rest up.
No,
Bethany said.
Stay together.
We passed a gas station and a body shop. There weren't many homes in the vicinity. It looked like the road went north, perhaps leading back up into the country we had just left. I saw a sign by a driveway that read Sisterhood of the Nazarene Care House. The building was barely visible from the street, set behind a wall draped with bougainvillea. 2 cars and a van were parked in back. One car had a fish emblem on the bumper, while the other had a Placer County official sticker and several permit tags with numbers and letters. Judging by the logo, the van belonged to the facility.
Not here,
Bethany said. I'm going in to look. We don't have that many more options. She didn't argue. I found a propped open back door that led to the kitchen. Neither of them came with me. It was dark inside. I passed a storeroom pantry to my right and entered a spacious kitchen with stainless steel tables and sinks. It smelled of water and bleach, but I also smelled something cooking. Heat rose from a low oven. 2 swinging doors were propped open. Beyond them, I could make out a faint white glow. I came out into a dining room with a dozen tables and chairs. The tables all had tablecloths and small vases with tiny plastic flowers. The place looked immaculate. The room opened on a hallway where natural light came down through skylights. In a large room across the way, several people were seated on couches and chairs with another 3 in wheelchairs. I heard the scratchy sounds of a needle touching a record and music began to play. It sounded like the beginning of a symphony. An older man hobbled to a couch and sat down. No one noticed me approach. They were all elderly. They were dressed and neat, if a little frumpy. I caught the slightest whiff of urine and the old person smell that was inescapable in a place like this. My grandmother lived in a similar home for 10 years. I had hated every visit and resented my mom for guilting me into going, until my grandmother finally died. Then I felt nothing but guilt. "Who's in charge here?" I asked. Several faces looked up at me. A man sat forward. He wore a burgundy sweater vest and his hair looked like spun silver.
You can be, if you'd like,
he said. No, I'm not. I'm just looking for someone who runs the place. A woman sitting next to the man nudged him.
Now, Terry,
she purred.
That would be Jasmine,
Terry said.
She's single-handedly kept this place together the last couple of days.
He got up and began hobbling into the hallway. The woman cleared her throat and pointed at a nearby walker. He took it begrudgingly.
I'll take you to her,
he said. I saw a couple more residents sitting just outside their rooms. Even in the bad light, I could make out their expressions. Most wore a look that translated in my mind to a needy desperation, confusion, or a search for something familiar that wasn't present. None of them knew me, yet some held a desperate hope in their eyes. From my experiences with Grandma, I knew any visitor was welcome. A woman in one bedroom was calling for help. Terry paid her no mind and kept motoring on. Around the corner were more rooms. I heard a toilet flush and looked through one open door to see an old man emerge from a bathroom. He was naked and his shriveled member dangled for all to see. I turned away quickly. At the end of the hall was a laundry room. The giant washing machines were silent. A small woman with Asian features wearing a long white skirt, a uniform shirt, and a small gold cross on a necklace was piling sheets into a large sink and running water over them. Next, she shook in some powdered soap. A side door was propped open. It led to a courtyard where pillowcases and clothing were draped over deck furniture. The smell here was the worst yet, a pungent mix of bleach and feces.
"Jasmine, we have a visitor,"
Terry said. Jasmine looked up and I could see the exhaustion in her eyes.
"Thank you, Terry," she said. "Go back to the rec room and help mind the others."
She spoke with an affected accent that I couldn't place. Maybe Australia? It couldn't be a real accent, but she kept it up.
"How can I help you?"
She began massaging the soapy water into the sheets. "Are you all alone here?" I asked. She smiled.
"Just me, Gord, and Terry to keep us all going."
I had counted at least 20 rooms, each with 2 beds. While I hadn't seen that many patients, the number I had seen was staggering for one person to care for. "My friends and I needed a place to crash," I said, feeling instantly wrong even as the words came out.
"Where'd you run away from?"
Was it that obvious? "We were fighting the fires, but now we're just trying to get back to Roseville. If it's okay, we just need to rest for a couple of hours." She sprinkled more soap onto the sodden sheets.
"There's an administrator's office by the lobby on the other side of the building. There's a couple of couches in there. Help yourself."
I nodded and looked back down the hallway.
"Catch up with Terry. He can show you."
I got Mindy and Bethany to follow me, and Terry led us to the office. Neither girl looked comfortable as we walked past the group in the rec room still listening to the record player. I asked how it was that they had a working player, and Terry said it had a hand crank and could be wound up. I filled the girls in on the situation as they settled down on the 2 couches. I dragged a wingback chair over and put my feet up on a coffee table covered with copies of Catholic Digest and Sunset magazine. Sitting felt good. My leg muscles ached and my feet were sore. Bethany and Mindy settled in and dozed, but I couldn't sleep. I went back down the hall and found Jasmine. I took the sheets she was finishing up with and went to find places outside to hang them up. Most had stains that hadn't come out even with the strong bleach solution. There were 2 more loads of sheets to do, then some clothing, and before I knew it, Jasmine had left me, saying something about checking on dinner. An analog clock hanging in the laundry room still worked. It read 4. I overfilled one of the sinks with the rest of the clothing, put cold water on it all, and mixed in soap. I churned it all until suds began to rise and left it to soak. I washed my hands and went to the kitchen. A large boxy flashlight shined its light onto the ceiling, throwing out enough illumination to see. Jasmine was leaning in the oven, putting a metal thermometer with a glass dial into a turkey. Mindy was at the stove working over a metal chafing dish set over 2 burners. She stirred red beans. "Where's Beth?" I asked. Mindy pointed. Bethany stood in the shadows near the door to a walk-in refrigerator. She appeared content to do nothing.
"Go to the storeroom and get bread rolls," Jasmine said. "Check them for mold spots."
I did as requested. The white bread rolls looked clean and I didn't see any weird blemishes. I ate one. A little dry, but I didn't care. I was starving. Jasmine had me stuff them onto a large tray and put them into a second oven with the heat set low. She then took a knife from a magnet rack of kitchen blades and began to carve the bird.
"No one came in the morning after,"
she said as she worked the knife in a smooth cutting motion along one side of the turkey's breast.
"I was on the night shift. The other woman called in sick, and I never heard from her replacement."
"How many are supposed to be here during the day?"
8 plus the administrator."
"You're a nurse?" She nodded. She set a water kettle on the stove to boil. The sliced meat went into another tray and back into the oven. She put the remains of the turkey's carcass into a large pot and had Mindy fill it halfway with water. This was set to simmer.
"Terry,"
Jasmine said. I hadn't noticed the man come in, but he hovered in the doorway on his walker.
"Get everyone into the dining room. The girls here will be serving dinner in 15 minutes.
She had set aside some of the meat and began cutting it fine. Then she took some of the hot water from the kettle and made small dishes of minced-up meat topped with hot water. She got a cart ready and loaded it with trays of food.
"It's for the patients who can't chew," she said. "The food processor doesn't work."
She did the same preparation with some of the beans. "Plates are in there," she said, pointing to a cabinet by the door. "I'll be bringing the food to the others if you'll handle the dining room." When she saw me hesitate, she said, "Don't worry, none of them bite. And please be sure to say grace for everyone before they start eating." Grace didn't happen, but they ate. Mindy and I brought out a couple of plates at a time, putting less and less turkey on each when I realized there wasn't enough to give everyone what I considered a full portion. No one complained. Some ordered coffee or juice, and Terry wanted a Manhattan. The kitchen had juice. Everyone else was getting a glass of water. I was in the kitchen loading a tray with plastic cups filled with water when Bethany said, "When you're done here, we should keep going." I paused. Maybe we need to decide where before we leave. "Roseville. The hospital." It's a long walk. What other choice is there? I placed my hands down on the metal kitchen table. The pain had barely let up. Being distracted helped. If what was on my hand was the same thing that grew on all the people I had seen in the market, mine was growing slower for some reason. But that didn't mean it couldn't suddenly overtake me. Would we all become like Officer Byrd? I tried not to think of the goddess's voice. It was as if she were there, poised at the corner of my mind, waiting to draw me in. And how bad would that be? There was the unspoken promise of someplace peaceful, happy, and free from pain. Mindy and Bethany felt it too. I knew it even without them saying anything. Maybe we would all be together there. Maybe we would become one, like the folks who were part of Officer Byrd. I pushed the thought from my mind. Let's get these people their dinner. Tomorrow morning we go. I didn't wait to see if the answer pleased her. We finished up dinner service and then I went to find Jasmine. She was changing the sheets on a bed. The room had 2 beds, one already made. The residents didn't have much in the way of personal belongings. There were a few pictures of family and a few knickknacks. I saw a clarinet on a shelf, and some crude overglazed pottery that looked like it was made by a child who couldn't decide between a bowl and an ashtray. An old woman in a wheelchair waited between the beds. She wouldn't make eye contact and ignored me when I said hello. "She's deaf," Jasmine said. "Blind too?" "Just grumpy." "Mrs. Holland, you have a visitor," Jasmine said in a voice that would have stirred the dead. Miss Holland looked in Jasmine's approximate direction before returning to her despondent slump. "Is there anyone you'd like us to contact tomorrow when we leave?" I asked, "in case the power doesn't come back on?" "The goddess will care for us. Put in a word for me and the patients here." I don't talk to her. I think she's done enough damage. She gave me a smile. "She's listening." She then put a hand to her cross necklace. "Well, I don't want to be rude because I know you have your hands full here, but one of your gods is dropping the ball." Jasmine appeared unfazed by my comment. She moved to the next room. Some of the framed pictures set on a dresser showed a young man with a woman. The man looked like he might be Terry. One bed was roughly put together like someone had gotten up and thrown the blanket and sheets over the pillow. The second bed was already made. There was a county vehicle out back. Was someone here? "A health inspector. He came late in the afternoon when everything started." I guess he didn't stick around to help. She piled the sheets from the bed into a wheeled bin. With a spray bottle, she squirted down the bare mattress. She ignored the second bed. "You have empty beds here?" "Some." There were maybe 12 at dinner. There's a few in the hallway that didn't make it down. Is there another wing to this place? "No. If their needs become more acute, we send them to another facility." Like in the previous room, the side of the room with the made-up bed had a few personal effects. I saw some framed fishing lures and a man posing with a pair of salmon while standing at the rail of a boat at sea. "Who's this?" "That's Mr. Lerner." He had curly locks of hair distinctly thinning at the top. With that hairdo, he looked like he should be conducting an orchestra instead of fishing. I didn't see him at dinner. "Oh." Jasmine thought for a moment. "He might be in the chapel." I heard the soft sound of bells as I reached the chapel door. It sounded like a breeze disturbing an array of wind chimes. The chapel was down its own hallway near the rec room. From behind me, I could still hear the music from the record player. They had moved on from classical and now played what sounded like Dolly Parton. A row of 5 candles burned at the front of the chapel on a staggered pedestal set in front of a lectern. A dark wooden crucifix hung on the wall. Faint gray light shined down through a skylight, but the room remained largely in shadow. The sun must have been setting. The bells were louder inside. My arm began to itch. The chapel smelled of warm bodies. At least a dozen people sat in the pews. A woman knelt up at the front by a second pedestal that held extinguished candles. The white candle wax had melted and run, finally solidifying into icicles. The kneeling woman had a high-pitched, scratchy voice.
"Glory be to the Father,"
she intoned,
"and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost."
The rest she recited quickly, the words running together. She concluded with,
"Ever shall be a world without end. Amen."
Then she started it from the beginning. The chimes kept ringing. I didn't feel a breeze. The sound gnawed at me, and curiosity overrode my apprehension about seeing so many residents jammed into the small chapel. None of them had left to eat. I saw some were nodding as if the words held meaning, while others were bowed forward as if in prayer. I walked down the aisle towards the woman. She wore a dark shawl, and her fingers were busy in front of her, working at a circle of beads. Seeing this tugged at a part of my mind. I felt a strong desire to kneel next to the woman and join her. A warm tingle ran through my arm. The pain was easing. The relief made me forget the revulsion I would normally feel about being inside a place like this. My mother had given up trying to get me churched when I was 10. Something writhed under her shawl. My arm gave a squeeze as if the tender skin was now beginning to tighten. I gasped in pain. It would all go away if I knelt and joined the woman. With my good hand, I pulled the shawl off the old woman's face. Underneath, the growth was large and puffy, and it enveloped her nose and eyes. The foreign mass seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting as if it were a separate life form. She didn't respond to me. Her rote chant continued. My head swam and felt full of cotton. Submitting would be easy, like falling asleep after a long day. The dreams I was to have were laid before me like a banquet. "Sit," the woman said. But it wasn't the voice of an old woman. It was my mother speaking. "We'll talk for a while. Maybe have a picnic together." "Mom," I whispered. "It's me, honey." I bit my lip. I felt tears forming. I didn't want to go crazy, but it felt so easy. "How are you here?" The woman moved her fingers to the next bead. "You worry. You'll get wrinkles. I always tell you that. But we should be celebrating. You're out early and now we can be together. I've put in a good word for you. From here on out, it'll be smooth sailing." "You're not real." "I'll pray for you. She'll listen and you'll be blessed." "Stop. Robbie will join us. We'll be a family again just like before. Better even. I'll plan a luncheon. You can invite all your friends. I'll make a ham. You always liked my ham." My breath caught in my throat. "Robbie? He's with you?" "Oh, yes. You were right. I just had to call him. We're together now. We all are." "Mom, how did you get sick?" "I'm not sick, honey." I thought of when I had last seen my mother. The makeup had covered over her blemish. She had touched me. It had all started then. But her, and now Robbie? It didn't make sense. I was losing my mind. This is what happens when you make sanity a dump stat. My mind fought off the haze and worked the problem in front of me. "When did you see the goddess?" I asked. My mom tittered. It was her placeholder laugh, her when she was thinking of what to say. "When?" I said louder. "Marilyn and I went to San Francisco 3 weeks back, remember? That was when the goddess appeared over the Golden Gate Bridge. She flew over us when we were taking morning pictures by the Legion of Honor. It was spectacular. You never told me. I know. I thought I would save it as a surprise. The old woman's mouth twisted into a smile. You knew. You wanted me to get sick. To give me this. I gestured with my right arm. Now, Deanne, don't be mean. You know how you can get with your temper. Yeah, I do know. With all my might, I swung my arm back into the lectern. It sent a shockwave of white pain up my shoulder. My head cleared enough so I could stand. None of the penitent faces in the chapel looked up at me as I howled. I heard the voice in my head scream. Not Mom's, but the goddess's. And she was angry. It was terrible. But at the same time, it also carried the petulant, pissy tone of my mother when she would shriek at me for my latest outrage. It was a wall of noise, the ocean crashing against rocks. I would be punished, that was for certain. The congregants began to wiggle as if an electric current ran through them. I moved past the pews. In the dim light, I could see a network of skin attaching each of their clasped hands together. It was like a web, running hand to hand and foot to foot. One man had keeled over into the lap of another. His face was now part of the other's forearm. He wasn't old like the others, but a younger man with a collared shirt and a tie. An ID badge hung from a lanyard around his neck. Placer County Department of Public Health. I burst through the doorway. Jasmine stood crookedly in the middle of the hall, blocking my path. I could see in her outline her left hip looked out of joint, as if her alignment was off. We're cared for, Jasmine said. She tends to our needs, and we need no other. She's cared for you. I shook my head. No, you're sick. We all are. We need to find help. This isn't right. It's easier for those who listen. Maybe I don't want to. I can care for myself. Now get out of my way. She didn't move. Then she took a shambling step forward, leaning on the safety rail that ran the length of the hall as if she could no longer stand up straight. Keep away from me, I said. She took a second step towards me. Bethany appeared behind the nurse. She was at least 1.5 feet taller. In her hand, she held a cutting board. Before Jasmine could turn to look up at her, Bethany swung the cutting board and knocked her across the back of the head. Jasmine fell over, but her hands clung to the wall rail. She twisted around at an odd angle, her head hanging and turning around to take in Bethany, and then rotating again in my direction. A house divided against itself will fall, Jasmine said in a calm voice. Her hair dangled to the floor, her trailing hairnet having been dislodged by the blow. Bethany kicked the woman and she tumbled forward. Jasmine's face turned up at me, as if she were a puppet contorting to an evil child's whim. There is a place for you here. You're all special to her. Bethany stepped past her and pulled at my arm. I nodded at her but couldn't move, couldn't speak. Some part of me had felt the pain of the cutting board hitting Jasmine. Time to go, Bethany mumbled. Yeah. But as she led me along towards the kitchen, I looked back. Jasmine had gotten herself back up and followed us into the hallway. She then looked towards the rec room. Terry was standing there, and he gave me the smallest wave. Dolly Parton's quavering voice filled the hall. Jasmine turned in Terry's direction and began walking towards him. We can't leave them, I said. But Bethany wasn't waiting. I followed her through the dining room, catching glimpses of the other residents' faces. They weren't sick, but none of them would be able to keep up. I have to go to the bathroom, one woman said as we passed by. I couldn't help her. I couldn't do anything for any of them. Warm tears were streaming freely down my face by the time we collected Mindy from the kitchen and headed out the back of the rest home. It was night out. The sky held a faint glow from the setting sun, with a few high clouds backlit by a cast of green light. It's her, Mindy said. We didn't pause long enough for her to explain. Mindy hurried to keep up. She wiped her hands on a white cloth apron as she jogged along. The goddess was here, and in so many of them. Her voice sounded hopeful, and she turned to look behind us at the rest home as we made it out onto the street. I grabbed Mindy and shook her. They're sick. We're sick. Whatever you hear in your head, fight it. But I don't want to. We should go back. I'm tired. Bethany said something that I couldn't make out. Mindy looked at her, clearly taken aback. But then she marched along without further comment as we headed towards the highway. I worked Bethany's garbled syllables over in my mind. The best I could come up with. Chapter 20. Third Night. As Magus built, he explored the city. He didn't range far, but he had to know what the natives were like. It only took him moments to realize the inhabitants of the blue world weren't efficient in their use of space or resources. Perhaps the layout of structures and roads met some artistic sensibility that escaped him. They seemed intent on providing crowded and competing spaces for themselves, for their plant life, and for their vehicles. Their structures were flimsy and would never have lasted long in the winds and shard storms of his native world. A few of the inhabitants came out of their structures when he approached. They fled, but their appearance reminded him of several of the minder species. Upright, bipedal, with a similar proportion of elements throughout their skin. High water content. Little in the way of any natural shell to shield them from infection. Perfect fodder for the hive. The Alpha Guardian would have an additional advantage in communication if their reaction to his appearance was any indication. His own body was nothing like theirs. He searched for more of the city dwellers so he could continue his observations. At the same time, he worked and continued to gather. Say what you will about the end of the world, but the views kept getting more spectacular. As the evening turned to night, the last glow of the setting sun vanished, but continued to backlight the western horizon. The green clouds above grew brighter. Then more stars fell. Fewer than the previous night, but brighter. Some appeared to streak down and crash into the distant valley. One particularly bright blue light stood out among them all. It burned long and wide, and I had to squint to keep looking. It was as if it were giving birth to a new sun. There was something new and hopeful in that falling star, as if it would smash everything to bits when it struck home. As if, like the voice of the goddess, its arrival meant no more pain. The impact would shatter the world, and I could finally fall into nothing. It landed to the south. The light faded instantly, and there was no shockwave or anything else to indicate it had even hit the ground. Then I heard screams. Not in my ears, but in my head. It was like the goddess's voice, but not hers exactly. It was a low murmur, the speakers unknown to me, the sounds more akin to the praying of the woman in the chapel or the voice of Officer Bird. They were in pain, dying, and as they faded, I knew they were dead. It was all connected to the shooting star. Bethany had doubled over and had almost fallen to the ground. Mindy had an arm around her but appeared to be in no small amount of discomfort herself as she winced and gritted her teeth. I took a knee and smacked my arm onto the ground. The fresh renewal of pain cleared my head. I bit my lower lip and began taking deep breaths. "What's happening?" Mindy asked. "I don't know," I said. "Something different. It's not her. It's not the goddess." I didn't want any of this to make sense. At any moment, someone would shine a light in my eyes and I would come to in a hospital with a doctor and nurses hovering around me and my mother telling me I would make it. She would be wearing a new outfit like she was channeling a first lady from a century back, and she would have on fake nails to cover over her chewed ones. I focused on the thought of my mom and her bumper sticker smile and got up. I didn't think my legs would hold me, but they did. A chorus of wails came up from the rest home. The chapel choir was in session, and they sounded miserable. A weird part of me was glad for their pain. It was like picking a scab long after the crunchy parts were gone. Something was hurting the infection. I helped Bethany stand. Her hands were fists. If I felt this much pain in one infected limb, she must have been suffering bad. We walked towards the highway. People were standing outside the Arby's and watching the sky. I couldn't blame them. It was beautiful. But I knew if we didn't keep moving, we would die. The voices weren't speaking, but they were regrouping, as if the falling star had been a minor discomfort quickly forgotten. We seemed to be the only ones out and moving. Mindy and Bethany kept up, but I set the pace and it was faster than before. The adrenaline had faded, and once again we hadn't eaten much. The need for food and good rest was compounding. It took another hour before we saw the next town. It was home, and Roseville was burning. I counted more than 20 smaller fires. Homes and trees were burning, from what I could tell. With no electric lights, I had a hard time orienting myself, but the next exit sign clued me in. We were 3 exits from the one that would take me home. The other girls seemed to know where they were, too. Bethany looked out at the view in silence.
I think that's downtown,
Mindy said, pointing vaguely. A helicopter flew by, surprising me. It was the first aircraft we had seen since the lights had gone out. This confirmed there were more than just a couple of cars still running. The helicopter was loud, but it had no lights on, making me think it was military. It flew south. Mindy was up on her toes waving at it. Once it was out of earshot, we kept going. Further along, a big rig had jackknifed and was blocking both westbound lanes. Other cars had smashed into the truck and its trailer, making it the biggest wreck we had yet seen. Even the shoulder was blocked, forcing us to climb across a few bumpers to get past. On the other side of the truck, I saw more of the beehives. We steered clear of them. The hospital was a couple of miles off the highway, but we needed to take a break. We were all winded and our walk had become a shuffle. We took the off-ramp, which led us to 4 gas stations and a Chili's restaurant. I had eaten there with my mom when I could talk her into going out for something that wasn't sushi. The idea of raw fish this far inland never felt right with me. From somewhere nearby, I could hear a baby cry, but before I could tell what direction the sound was coming from, it stopped.
There's a baby,
Mindy said. I'm sure there is, I said. Lots of them. It's okay. It's probably with its mom. We can't worry about that right now. Someone had set fire to the contents of a dumpster next to a commercial building past the restaurant. The fire had died down enough to be safe, and the blaze was the only nearby light. Now that we were off the freeway, the fires beyond were nothing but a faint glow. I pointed to a small building. Let's try there, I said. According to a sign outside, it held a bunch of dentist offices. The front glass door was smashed in, which gave me pause, but Bethany stepped inside past me. A concrete stepping stone lay on the tile floor among the shattered white pebbles of glass. Then Bethany froze.
Who's there?
A man hissed from the darkness.
We have a gun pointed at you. Just turn around and leave.
There's 3 of us, I said. Bethany made for a good shield, but I stepped out from behind her with my hands clearly visible. We need a place to take shelter. I'm Deanne. I live down on Sable Lane near Washburn Elementary.
I don't know where that is,
the man in the dark said. It's not far, but too far to make it there tonight. Can't we stay here? This is a big building. A small flashlight came on. The man stepped closer. From what I could tell, he looked young, maybe 20. He shined the light and took a look at us. In his other hand, he held a handgun, but it was pointed at the ground.
You're sick,
he said once he got a good look at Bethany. Mindy came through the door behind me.
So is everyone outside, she said. We just want a place to sleep.
The lighter clicked off.
You run into anyone else out there?
No, not in Roseville, I said. We were walking the freeway heading west.
If they see your friend here, it might not be good.
What do you mean?
It seems people that get sick become dangerous. I don't know about that. I've got it on my arms. Hurts like hell, but I haven't hurt anyone.
I considered the door and wondered if we shouldn't leave. Then I heard a young girl call out.
Grant?
The voice came from a nearby office, where a cushion was keeping the door open. Grant put the handgun into his belt.
There's plenty of offices here where you can stay,
he said.
Just no lights. I don't want to attract any attention.
He handed a key set over to me. If you have keys, why is the front broken? He chuckled.
I didn't have the keys when I got here.
Between the dentist offices, I found one with a sign that read Franklin and Jones Family Counseling. It took a minute to get the right key in the door, but once inside, we discovered several couches and enough windows to help us navigate the shadows. I got Bethany and Mindy settled in. I almost checked the phone on the receptionist's desk, but decided not to. Even if I could get it to work, I was afraid of who might be on the other line. Restless, I went out into the hallway to find Grant. He emerged from the office the girl had called from and set the pillow back in the door. "Who's that in there?" I asked.
My little sister. We were all driving back from Salt Lake City when the power quit, and we wrecked on the highway.
You two were driving all alone? There was a pause.
No. My mom was in the passenger seat. She didn't make it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but we got help and some food at a grocery store. Then some people decided they didn't like anyone who had the disease on them. They looked like they were going to round up a few of them. I grabbed Paige and we got out of there.
When was that?
The first night. But people saw folks getting sick before that. News was reporting some sort of bacterial infection everywhere since the goddess appeared. Hard not to blame the angel of death.
I had heard a couple of those reports, but it had all been buried by the goddess news. To hear Grant say it so plainly was refreshing, if not depressing. What could anyone have done?
But where are my manners? He asked. There's a pharmacy here with a snack rack. Let me show you.
The pharmacy occupied one end of the downstairs offices. The door to the front of the store had been propped open. I walked the short aisles and browsed the vitamins and medicines available. I doubted an over-the-counter topical cream would do anything for my arm. A metal curtain was locked above the granite counter in the back. That was where the good stuff was. I doubted any of the keys would work the lock. The pharmacist wouldn't take that kind of chance with the maintenance staff. For good measure, I tugged on the metal curtain. It held fast. I didn't know what I would do if I could get past that curtain. Over the past couple of years, I had retreated into a numb haze, and I knew exactly which pills to look for. I browsed the cold and allergy medicine. Wouldn't it be a laugh if this whole thing could be cleared up by an antihistamine? The goddess allergy had a certain ring to it. There was plenty of candy and cough drops and other edibles at the front of the store. I took a couple of bags of sunflower seeds. They didn't have Snickers. I'm sure the goddess will forgive my theft, I said.
You're a believer,
he said. Hardly, I laughed. But the other two girls are.
Tell them I'll leave a note accounting for what we took, if that will help.
Is that what they teach you in Salt Lake City?
Who, me? We're not Mormon.
He grabbed a couple of things from the counter and we returned to the broken front door. There were a few chairs in the cold lobby.
This is my post. I'll be here while you guys sleep, if that makes you feel any better.
I should have been tired. I even yawned without covering my mouth. I sat down next to him. Where'd you get the gun? I asked. He placed the weapon on his lap.
I took it from someone. Someone that was going to hurt us.
We've run into a few monsters too. It was too dark to see if he got the joke, not joke. I thought it would be a sufficient segue into asking about the weirder things we had experienced. But if he hadn't run into anything like we had, where do you start? He popped the top off a small bottle and swallowed a pill. He handed the bottle over. It was an energy supplement.
Like I said, I'll be up if you want to grab some sleep. Take the keys if it makes you feel safe.
Why would you trust me like that? He shrugged.
It's my fatal flaw.
I shook out a few pills and put them in my pocket. You're going to be wasted if you don't get sleep. Let me relieve you in a bit.
Not necessary. I won't be sleeping.
I took the keys. How about if I give them back to you a little later? Then you can lock yourself up with your sister and get rest. Besides, you have the gun. He shook his head.
I've been having weird dreams. Thought it would be best if I avoided sleep entirely.
Guy with knives on his hands busting your balls? I realized he was too shagged out to be joking. Do you hear voices? He nodded. There's some crazy stuff going on with the infection, I said. We hear it too. I hear her, the goddess. And now I'm hearing my mother. But I'm not even sleeping when it happens. Have you seen anything, though? Things flying, like these bats with no heads? People acting stranger than the ones who didn't want sick people around?
The helicopter earlier this evening was the only thing flying that caught my attention. So no, nothing like that. But we've been avoiding everyone.
I couldn't tell if he thought I was crazy now. That's what happens when you share. So where are you and your sister trying to go?
Reading. We still have a bit of a walk.
Come with us, I was about to say. But I stopped myself. We were in no condition to take anyone in. We were the ones that needed help. And what was I doing getting close to this guy? If the pharmacy hadn't been locked up, would I be popping pills and getting high and glomming onto him like he had something I needed? Thanks for keeping watch, I said. Good night.